It is truly a great honor to be asked to be part of this well-deserved tribute to Dean Fixsen. Dean has been a teacher and mentor to so many in this field. Professionally, Dean essentially originated implementation science. His combination of a theoretical framework with practical tools has led to the explosion we have all witnessed. He tells the truth in a way that easily resonates with so many across a plethora of disciplines.
I can actually remember when I first learned about implementation science. I had just moved from New Mexico to Florida. I was attending a conference there, and I attended a session led by Francis Wallace and Sandra Naum, where they described the final stages of their review of the implementation literature, which led to this publication that some of you will know. And I remember as they described the active implementation frameworks, I remember thinking that there could be no better therapy for me, given the work I had been doing in New Mexico and our efforts to really bring evidence-based youth development and youth justice programs into the state, that everything that they described felt so true to me, and I thought it would have been so helpful, and also so reassuring and kind of reaffirming for me around what our efforts had looked like, our investment in our staff, our efforts to support people through coaching in real time, our commitment to fidelity to the model. And I just remembered thinking that, that I had found the Holy Grail. So this session, then a follow-up conversation with the women leading this session, led me to the opportunity a few months later to slowly get integrated into this research team and be a part of the work that was being led by Dean Fixsen and Karen Blasey at the time, that was very much applied implementation work with various groups trying to make various evidence-based and evidence-informed improvements. And clearly my professional journey was changed forever. So there's no way to minimize the impact that it was for me to have this opportunity to work so closely with that group of folks and with Dean Fixsen.
Dr. Dean Fixsen led the implementation for the Professional Learner Program I was part of at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. During this program, Dr. Fixsen and his team equipped me to initiate, sustain, and guide my organization-changing efforts. This knowledge helped me to improve our system by adopting the implementation handset in our daily practice. My team and I were made able to conduct an active implementation cycle by putting into practice the new innovations for the benefits of our patients.
Cuando hablamos del mundo real, parece que habláramos de un contexto único y homogéneo. Sin embargo, esto no es así. El mundo real cambia entre regiones del mundo, entre países e incluso dentro de territorios en un mismo país. Por eso es necesario tener una mirada situada, localmente sensible y culturalmente receptiva, que nos permita efectivamente cerrar la brecha entre lo que teóricamente se puede alcanzar y lo que realmente logramos en la práctica. Este marco es el que Dean Fixsen creó para nosotros, proponiéndonos una simple y bella ecuación. Para lograr resultados significativos, necesitamos de la interacción positiva de una innovación efectiva, una implementación de calidad y un contexto preparado. Basta con esto para comenzar la empresa, de identificar y describir estos términos a nivel global y comenzar a generar diálogos. ¿Qué estrategias de implementación son efectivas en regiones como las nuestras? ¿Cómo influyen las comunidades o las inestabilidades políticas? ¿Qué innovaciones pueden ser efectivas en contextos de emergencia, violencia o extrema pobreza? Cuando me acerqué a los textos de Dean, y no solamente a sus papers, sino también a sus presentaciones que vagan por la web, pude darme cuenta de que no era necesario para desarrollar ciencias de implementación estudiar en un país extranjero. Pues nos daba las pistas a todos aquellos que no podemos viajar para pensar de manera científica la investigación en implementación. Es decir, había sentado las bases para una ciencia de implementación global.
This is an initiative from the Global Implementation Society where we want to gather part of our history. And you have been so important in our history as a society and mostly in the history of implementation science. So that's why we want you to share with us and with who are listening from the whole world your life trajectory with implementation science. So how did you get involved in implementation science? How did everything started?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in all of this. And the older I get, the more interested I am in history, since that's all I have. So I'm pleased to be here, and thank you. But we started out attempting to develop an evidence-based program, although we didn't call them evidence-based programs back in the day. We called them program models, models that could be replicated. But we started in 1967. And so our colleagues in the University of Kansas were developing a teaching family group home model that persists to this day, as a matter of fact. But after doing years of research, we attempted then to do our first replication. We started another teaching family home in a nearby community. After several months, the board of directors that we had, our friends on the board of directors that we had recruited to be on the board for the new home, they called us up and they fired us. And so that was my introduction to implementation. We would work so hard. I mean, to open a group home in a community, anybody who's done that kind of work, you have to have a home that's big enough. You have to get it licensed. You have to do neighborhood entry. Who wants a home for delinquent kids in their backyard? So the preparation and all the work that we put into it, we were so discouraged that after less than a year, we were fired from our job. But fortunately, we had a couple of other homes that were open at the same time. And so we were able to take our learning from our first failure and apply that pretty quickly and do slightly better. At least we didn't get fired right away in the next iterations. But that was my introduction to implementation. And for the past 50 years, I was reminded the other day, 1971 to 2021, that's 50 years. So for 50 years, we've been pursuing answers to those questions that we were introduced to back in 1971. But that's how I got started.
Karen told Dean when they completed the 2005 implementation monograph that either nobody would even notice or they would be inundated. And then how would they respond? How would they meet the demand? I think we all know how that turned out. Personally, he is largely responsible for the final decade prior to my retirement being so rewarding. Helping to plan the first 2 global implementation conferences was a career highlight.
The long and short of it is that I was invited to join the GIC, the Global Implementation Board, and for various reasons, at a particular point, there was only 3 of us on the board keeping the society going at a critical period. Actually, I remember that during that time, Dean had to use his own credit card to underwrite a transitional period, and unless he'd have stepped in and made that decision then, there wouldn't be a society now. It shows his dedication and what we owe to one of the things that we owe to Dean.
And how did you start gathering people interested in implementation science, and to the point where you thought about creating a society?
Well, that is, we'll jump forward a few years. So in the early 2000s, the Florida Mental Health Institute at the University of South Florida for many years has had an annual conference, and it's children's mental health was the theme of it. But a subgroup, and of course in the children's mental health conference, evidence-based programs and how you change systems, all of those things were prominent features and themes. But out of that, a subgroup formed, the Evidence-Based Consortium. And David Bernstein, who's long since retired, was the chair of that. But he got probably 20 people together. And so at the annual conference, we would meet. So in 2008, Karen Blasey and myself, we proposed a subgroup of that group to start looking into having an implementation conference. And so national, international, we were pretty sure we wanted this to be not just North America. So, and we had members of the group that were from other countries as well. So, but David Bernstein, Jennifer Schroeder, Bianca Albers, Jackie Brown, Patrick Canary, Tom Backer, that was the group that volunteered then to help design a conference. And this was in 2008, March of 2008. We thought, well, next year, 2009, we'll put on a conference. Well, in 2011 was our first conference in August of 2011. But out of that, we learned that we really needed to have an official organization. So the society was, or Global Implementation Initiative, as it was called at that time, was officially incorporated the next year in 2012. But finally, we got a society that was something that was an ambition from the beginning, but that was launched in January 2018. So the idea really grew out of the interest in evidence-based programs and the implementation of those, and the research to practice gap. All of those things were heavy on our mind. But thanks to David Bernstein and his subgroup, we really got it started. And then the other people I mentioned really worked hard for many years to finally get a society.
I was there for 2011 in Washington, D.C. in that conference 10 years ago. And it was shocking to me when you made the call for a meeting, a lunch meeting. I remember Jackie Brown, and to invite people from to have a global perspective. And it was only two of us from the Global South. I remember, I don't know who he was, but there was a man from Ghana and myself from Chile. And now it's shocking to see that 10 years after that, we have 29 countries, a board with representatives from every region. So I wanted to ask you, like, what do you see today? What surprised you about who we are today in the Global Implementation Society?
Well, that's a great question. When we started the society, I mean, this was after many years of debate, you know, finally in 2018 that we had the society officially organized and people started signing up. Lots of people signing up, which was nice to see. And we really expected, given all the conferences and the interest that had been expressed, we expected people to be interested. What I did not expect, and I was so happily surprised, was the level of commitment. People, when they were registering as a society member, they were saying, do you have committees? I want to be on a committee. I mean, and I think at one time, over 40% of all members that first year also volunteered their time to sit on committees. And so that level of commitment to advancing the field, not just participating and being a recipient, these were people who wanted to generate the next levels of things. And that was a pleasant surprise. I was so happy then and now to see that. The other thing was just the rapid expansion globally. I mean, you mentioned this already, Francisca, but the array of people from so many different countries who were not only attending the conferences, but also participating as members of the society. So to have that kind of diversity, and not just countries, but also different, I mean, from mental health and substance abuse and delinquency and education and business. I mean, the topical areas of great diversity, but also diversity in terms of the countries and the worldwide interest in all of this. So those things were pleasant, heartwarming surprises, and I appreciated it then, appreciate it now.
Let me say it is really hard to think of Dean without mentioning Karen. I find it difficult to think about one without the other.
And Karen Blasey at the time.
Como se lo plantea Karen Blaze.
I learned quite some time ago that you truly can judge people by the company they keep. Witness his life partner, Dr. Karen Blasey. In addition to Karen, Dean has introduced me to a network of exceptional people who became wonderful colleagues. Many remain good friends.
Dean, now that you mention it, it's so fascinating how you have been able to combine different kinds of knowledge. I mean, now we're talking about different countries, different sectors, different disciplines. But what surprises me as a woman as well is that you have been able to combine your personal relationship with your job. I mean, you have worked with Karen. She's such a strong woman next to you. So could you talk a little bit to us about how your relationship with Karen has potentially improved or enhanced GIS?
Yeah. Well, Karen Blasey is a force of nature. She is so intelligent and hardworking and has this ability to conceptualize things. She'll take little pieces and parts of things, and then pretty soon you have a central theme that she has deduced out of the entire thing. So her intelligence is off the charts and has been a huge factor. Karen Blasey and I are married in addition to working together for many, many years. So, but it gives us many opportunities to talk about whatever, whenever. Our kids got a full education before they graduated from high school, so they naturally became implementation experts in one way or the other, so without even knowing it. But her, her ability to bring things together and her ability as a teacher, an educator, a person to convey information in ways that people 20 years later, they will say, well, as Karen Blasey says, and they'll recite something that she said at some meeting or in some training thing many years ago. So nothing but huge appreciation for her. I've never done anything in my life alone. So it's always been a part of a team, and Karen's always been a part of every one of those teams. So I owe her everything, really.
Dean, that's so inspiring to hear. We see GIS as such a collective community of, as I said, of commitment, love, perseverance, because not only we're trying to implement implementation science in our different disciplines, but also trying to convince others But what would you say to all of us who are listening and who are carrying this in our jobs? Like, what would be your words of for us to
Well,
do?
I think the Global Implementation Society and our profession is so very important. And the thing that I see for the society is really to, and my hope for the society, amongst many other activities, but overall is to promote the field. We need implementation science as a profession. In a profession, you have a knowledge base. And I think the journal that we have now, along with the conference, along with the other work that people do as members of the society, they contribute to the knowledge base. But you also have standards. If you have a profession, you have to know, well, who's a part of the profession and who's not. And so what are the standards? And again, we already have committees working on exactly those things. The thing that we're coming to, and it's going to take a while, if you have a profession and you have the knowledge base and you have standards, how do you prepare people then to meet those standards? How do they acquire that knowledge base? And so having certificate programs and university and college programs and all of those training opportunities to prepare people to participate in implementation science as a professional. The other thing that I hope the society will focus on over time is advancing the science of implementation. I mean, we're heavily a practice group. We're a very practical, pragmatic group of people by and large. I mean, we all have interest in science, to be sure. But I think the practitioner scientist, practitioner-scientist is where we need to go. Because you can't have implementation science without having implementation practice. Who's going to create the independent variables? If an implementation team is a critical piece of implementation that we want to study, who's going to create an implementation team? Well, it's going to take implementation practitioners. So I think advancing our profession as a profession, a self-conscious profession, is something that I would really like to see, and I think we're heading in that direction. But I look at all this, and over the past 10 years, and groups of people who are on the committees and actively engaged in the society, I think we have just the right people with just the right levels of dedication and commitment to all of this to make these things happen. So the last 10 years have been fascinating, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the next 10 years. So look forward to 2031 conference. Thank you.
It is my great honor to express our appreciation and sincere gratitude to Dr. Fixsen for his coaching and great support during every step of the project. Thank you for training me to maintain a constantly improving clinical practice. I value the insights and guidance you have provided throughout every step of the implementation process and to this moment. Thank you for showing me what it means to lead for a great purpose.
Now, as regards how my work with Dean has influenced my approach and professional work, the more I worked with Dean, the more I realized that this was really a world-class, gifted and experienced researcher and leader, but also actually the nicest and most enthusiastic and humble person I knew. He was always positive, and still is, and deferred praise and recognition to others. And every time, of the many times I was in his presence, it was a true joy, and it lifted my day. He became for me a role model in how to live life. and how to negotiate the ups and downs, also of growing older and what to do later in one's career, which has been particularly important in the last year.
My colleagues who would work with me now here in Scotland would know that we probably can't get through, for sure not through a week, but maybe not through a day without me having a good Dean Fixsen quote, or without me referencing where I'll point to my shoulder and say, I can kind of hear Dean saying to me right now. So I feel like Dean is very much a guiding force in my implementation career. I very much believe Dean makes me a better mentor and coach for my colleagues, and I couldn't be more grateful for having had the opportunity to work with him over these last few years.
Dean, no sé si te acuerdas de mí. Nos conocimos cuando ofreciste una conferencia inaugural en la Red Latinoamericana de Ciencias de Implementación. Conocerte y hablar contigo fue como conocer a un artista favorito, ¿no? Mis amigos se reían porque estaba tan emocionado, quería una foto contigo, un autógrafo. Tenía tantas ganas de conocerte que mi tímido inglés se escondió aún más. Rosalind Bertram te podrá contar de mi ansiedad con el idioma. Casi un año trabajando en el comité editorial de Gira y aún no puedo expresarme libremente. Me han tenido tanta paciencia. El idioma es algo que tenemos que resolver si queremos avanzar a una ciencia global. Como se lo plantea Karen Blaze, el lenguaje es una de las más significantes barreras de implementación. Sí, Dean, para gente como yo, eres una estrella. Pero más que eso, eres un gran maestro. La sencillez de tus textos, la claridad de tus ideas y la fuerza de tu visión han trascendido y han llegado a rincones tan lejanos desde como el que hoy te estoy hablando. Mil gracias, Dean. Recibe toda mi admiración y cariño. Un fuerte abrazo desde Chile.
I'd like to say two things to Dean. Personally, to thank you, Dean, for giving me the most important role model of my older age, and for behaving consistently as the only true Christian I know. Although I'm not sure if you even go to church. Probably don't. The second thing is to ask, if not beg you, to continue to provide the inspiration and example to others in the different ways that you just do naturally. You've helped so many people in ways you will never know, and you've got a lot more to do now, because a lot of people need your help. So a sincere thank you, Dean, from John over at Vise.
Dean, I love you. Thank you for the difference you have made in my life and the lives of so many others.